So I originally got the kill on February 20th. I was hoping to get the video out before the EOC rework, but unfortunately I was kind of too busy just enjoying EOC 1. So yeah, realistically pretty much everything that relates to DPS is going to be outdated, but I will say we're all more OP with EOC 2, so it should be easier. All the tanking stuff has not changed, and I got a pretty strong suspicion that even after the defense rework, it's probably not going to change. With all that being said, I welcome you to possibly the most useless guide you will ever watch, how to do 1000% Zammy on 1 defense with melee, specifically before the EOC rework. I'm going to put timeframes in the description, and I'm also going to put a link to just a raw footage kill if you're looking for that. So before we get into the loadout, I'm just going to go over essentially what makes 1 defense different to a 99 defense account. So right off the bat, the biggest one is going to be the fact that you have almost no defensive abilities. So you don't have access to barricade, debilitate, freedom, natural instinct, reflect, resonance, revenge, disruption shield, divert, immortality, and then also the rest of the defensives. So in terms of what you have for the defense skill abilities, all you have is anticipate with overloads because you need 3 defense for that, and you also have access to devotion because that one requires straight up level 0 defense. Now if these were your only options, I'll admit you literally wouldn't be watching this video because it wouldn't exist. You do have other options. So you got Pulverize, that's a melee ability that cuts down the damage that your target deals by 25% for 30 seconds. Also, after you've used the Exekill spec, if you're wearing it, you take 12% less damage from that target. Next, you have the Power Burst of Vitality. This is a pretty standard one. It just doubles your current HP for 6 seconds, so you want to use it when your HP is as high up as possible. We also have Shield Dome. It's a spell that has to be used off global cooldown. Essentially, it cuts down your damage in half that you take. The only thing is you can't do anything while you're using it. On top of that, if you use it again within 2 minutes, it's half as effective. So you do want to try to space out how much you're using it and just try to use other defensive options. And then finally, we got my favorite defensive option, the ugly ass fucking cheese curd on a stick, the Vesta Spear. The special attack costs 50% adren, and what it does is it basically shoots back half the damage that you would take for 4.8 seconds. The reason I like the Vesta Spear so much is because you don't have to actually be wearing it throughout the entire duration of the damage reduction. So the idea is you can pulverize, then you can Vesta Spear, switch to your EZK, drink your Power Burst of Vitality, and then Shield Dome, and then you can have Shield Dome, Vesta Spear, all that stacked in together for the remaining 3 seconds after the global cooldown. Now moving on from defensive options, the other thing is that you don't have any armor perks, which does mean that some of my weapon perks are actually different to what you would normally have. I'll get back to that when I get to the loadout. This one isn't exactly relevant to this, but I do just think it's a fun fact that I do want to bring up. We also didn't have access to curses for the longest time. You needed 29 defense, but luckily there was a dude who basically bitched about it for 2 years until they patched it. Honestly, thank you for that. This was years ago, but honestly, listen, I post a video with commentary every like 2 goddamn years. Just let me have this. Alright, so the next part we're going to be going over is going to be the loadout that I use for the kill. One of the first questions I usually get is, what armor do you use? So for every style except for range, the best in slot is going to be the tier 1 Necro armor. It has the stats of tier 10, which gives you your best HP buff. That's going to be your most important part. The other thing worth mentioning for the armor is that there is essentially no stat reduction for off style, so you don't got to worry about that. So the tier 1 Necro gloves and boots, they only give 50 HP each. It's honestly pretty negligible, so you're better off going with the Death Touch bracelet. That's going to give you your best stats for 1 defense, and then after that you're going to be using the Silverhawk feathers, because you're going to spend so much time dying, you might as well get some agility XP while you're at it. As for the rest of the gear, you're basically just wearing what's best in slot and whatever fits the situation best. So for the rest, we got the melee Zut cape. We also have an Essence of Finality amulet with the Dragon Longsword in it. I need something that essentially has a low cost for the spec, and honestly the damage output for it is not that bad. You have the Reaver's Ring for stats. Honestly, that's pretty much it. Okay, so I know I said it's melee. Don't worry about the Hydrix bolts for now. I'll get back to those. So the Vamp Scrim is for passive healing. Essentially it heals you for 5% of the damage you deal, or 200 HP. It does eventually get switched out on P7, but we'll get back to that. And then finally you have your aura, which is Supreme Invigorate. It saves you 10 adrenaline when you use an ultimate. It's pretty useful, especially when you're birding. We're not in this case, we're just sticking to melee. In a lot of spots, this aura is a nice to have. At a few spots, honestly, it can save you. So it's a pretty good aura. Alright, so let's move on to the inventory. So the first thing here is going to be the Erethor's Grimoire. The Grimoire bumps up your crit chance by 12%. It's good for P7 because honestly the only thing you need on that phase is just damage. You really don't need any kind of sustain. So you pretty much switch out your Vamp Scrim with the Grimoire as soon as P7 starts. The other thing for P7 is going to be the Ring of Death. Essentially when you die, there is damage that builds up until you die again. This is good for essentially getting a couple extra seconds on P7, which is all I need. I'll get back to the weapons in a bit, so let's just go over to the rune pouch. Essentially I've got the runes in there to use the Shield Dome spell. Next thing is going to be the Expensive Spices Amulet. As long as it's in your inventory, any piece of food that you eat will give you an extra 50 HP. Keep in mind, this doesn't apply to Bruise. The Nexus is for the Shadow Incantation. It's just the kills go for so long that you will have to renew it at some point. The rest is all pretty self-explanatory, so you have your Power Burst, you have your Bomb Bombs, your Dren Potion, your Overload, and then just a bunch of food. And I also have a Pack Mammoth that is stuffed with food. I have Primal Feasts, Blubbers, and Bruise in there. So because you don't have any armor perks, a lot of the perks you would normally put on armor actually has to be put on weapons. So because of this, a lot of your weapon perks are going to look a little weird. For example, here my leggings have Aftershock 4, Biting 2, Precise 6, and Mobile. And if it sounds like Biting being a weapon perk is absolutely fucking financially crippling, that's because it is. For the EZK, you have Biting 4, Aftershock 1, Precise 6, and Mobile. The reason my weapons don't have Eruptive in general is that if you math it out, Biting generally gives you more damage than Eruptive if you had to pick one or the other. Obviously, if you're a main, you could just have both. Pretty much anything that's a spec weapon, you're going to prioritize Biting over Aftershock, because the few hits you are hitting with your spec weapon, you really do want to try to get the most out of each of those hits. For the Masterwork Spear, you have Lunging 4, Eruptive 2, Relentless 5, and Aftershock 1. Relentless is there because 2 of the 3 abilities that you use with this weapon use Adrenaline, so you might as well. For the ZGS, the only relevant perk is going to be Relentless 5 and Aftershock 1, because the only reason you use this thing is just for the spec. For the Vesta's Cheese Curd, it's only Relentless 5, although now that I'm looking at it, I probably should have put Aftershock 1 on there as well. So for the Hydrix Bolts from earlier, we use those with the Eldritch Crossbow, which has the Caraming 4, Mobile, Biting 4, and Aftershock 1 perk. I use this crossbow to use the Greater Ricochet ability. Basically, it's 7 hits, and each of them could proc the bolts. So basically, in the middle of a melee rotation, you switch to the crossbow, you use Greco, and then you just switch back. And then finally, the last weapon is going to be the Saren Godbow. I have Biting 4, Aftershock 1, Precise 6, and Mobile on it. I didn't put Relentless on it despite the fact that it's only a spec weapon because I did prioritize consistent high damage output with it, as I generally use this weapon whenever I'm not in Zerk, and the Dragon Longsword EOF just wouldn't output as much damage for the same amount of adrenaline. Alright, so finally the last thing to go over is going to be all of the passive buffs that I have. So first thing is going to be the Arc Relics. I have Death Ward, Fury of the Small, and Conservation of Energy. The next buff is going to be the Desert Pantheon Aura that just gives you an extra 1000 HP. You can run this effect with any other aura, so I can still run Supreme Invigorate. Next is going to be the Powder of Penance. Essentially when you take damage, it gives you prayer points. This just allows me to not have to worry about prayer or have to carry any prayer potions. There's also the Darkness Incantation. It basically just makes it so every enemy has a 20% chance to splash on you. So before we get into the kill footage, one thing I will mention is I probably didn't use the easiest strat out there. However, one thing I will say, there's essentially no guide, so you kind of have to make up your own strat. I'm pretty sure skips at 1000% are still doable. They are definitely harder on one defense because you lose out on a lot of DPS. And with EOC2, I'm sure it's even easier to do skips now. So if you're doing skips, a lot of how I did this kill is essentially not really how you do it. But anyways, here's how I did it. So the pad order that I use for my kills is 2, 4, 6, 5, 1, 3. Pad 2 is just good for the reduced cooldowns. Pads 4 and 6 basically don't really do anything that's annoying. That's why I go on those. As for pad 5, that's because the traps are the next least annoying thing. Pad number 1 is pretty bad just because the double hits makes it really hard to soul split flick. And then finally you do pad number 3 because you have the witch that essentially makes it so Zammy takes less damage. It's pretty goddamn annoying. Alright, so with all that being said, now let's get into the actual kill footage. So first thing you do when the kill starts is you get his HP down. This just makes it easier to only get one mechanic on the first pad. So for this part, you're going to DPS him down with the ZGS spec because you want to make sure that your Zerk is off cooldown for when you step on the pad. Also, you want to start using Storm Shards throughout the fight just to make sure that you have your Shatter ready with 10 stacks on P7. So when you step on the first pad, you're going to use Berserk, you're going to G-Barge into any bleed threshold, then you Pulverize, use an EOF spec with your Dragon Longsword if you have the Adrenaline. Right before you gain all your Adrenaline back, you're going to drop a Chaos Roar into Overpower, and then you're going to use the Lang special attack. After that, you're going to use Devotion, and then hurry up and clear his HP bar, and when the bomb hits you, you're going to Shield Dome. After doing that, next thing you do is you go to the next pad, and as you're teleporting to go to the witch, you want to use Anticipate. One thing to watch for is the witch's Omni Power, and you want to make sure that your G-Barge bleed that you're dropping is Flurry, just for the earlier pads because basically you want to make sure that your Zerk cooldown is shortened. On later witches, you can use any threshold, it's just on the first few you want to use Flurry. Once you pop out, you just want to build up to 100 Adren. On the next pad, you're pretty much just doing a Zerk DPS dump again. This time though, the EZK spec, you can actually use that. So one auto attack after you clear his red HP bar, he's going to do the stun bomb mechanic. For that, you just use Anticipate, and during the animation where he teleports you, you'll want to stun him. Otherwise, you have to rush, get out, and then go back and stun him, and that's going to make the bomb hit for way more damage. It will probably kill you.
Feel the rage of a god!
So when you're clearing the demon, you want to make sure that you exit with 100 Adren, and you also want to make sure you're using Flurry because you're going to be using Zerk as soon as you pop out. As you're popping out, you want to use Zerk, G-Barge Threshold Bleed, then you want to build up to 65 Adren, use Chaos Roar, then Devotion, and then you just finish it off with Overpower.
Chaos unfettered! Heed my call!
So throughout the rest of the fight, pretty much every single one of the witch clears are all going to be the same. Only difference is you don't have to use Flurry necessarily. I kind of just do it out of habit. Just so I don't have to say it every single time. Every time you pop back out, before stepping on a pad, you're always going to want to build up to 100 Adren, obviously because you need it for Zerk. On this pad, you just do another DPS dump. The only thing you want to keep in mind is you want to keep your Adren over 50 because you're going to have the melee slam, and you'll need access to Devotion. The other thing is you want to make sure that you don't phase him before he does the melee slam, because if you do phase him, you're actually going to get one of those DPS check bombs. There's a couple spots throughout the fight where you don't want to phase him early, essentially, because as long as you don't phase him, he's going to keep doing the mechanic cycles from the last phase.
This world will burn!
After dealing with the melee slam, you're going to get a stun bomb. If you phase him early, you're actually going to get the DPS bomb into the Rune of Destruction, which are both the worst mechanics. But yeah, the way you deal with the stun bomb is the exact same as you did with the last one. You just anticipate, stun, and then just go kill the demon. Just make sure that you're popping out with 100 Adren. When you pop back out, you're going to use Zert, and then you do the rotation similar to the last pad, where you get up to 65 Adren, you Chaos Roar, Devotion, and then Overpower.
Chaos unfettered! Heed my call!
Okay, so we got another witch clear, so I'm just going to go ahead and start talking about the next pad because there is a lot to say about it. When you get on the pad, you want to start DPSing, but you'll want to make sure that you're using Pulverize in that DPS dump, because the mechanic you're going to get is going to be the DPS bomb. So when you get that, basically you want to stun, and then you want to clear the DPS check with Hurricane first and then Lang Spec. The thing with the Lang Spec is that sometimes it fully clears the DPS check and then sometimes it doesn't. The issue with that is as soon as you clear the DPS check, you need to Vesta Spear within maybe a tick or two at most. That's because you want to make sure that the global cooldown from using the Vesta Spear clears before the bomb hits you. The thing is, if you do Vesta Spear too late, the global cooldown doesn't clear in time for you to use Shield Dome. In a nutshell, you're basically stacking a bunch of defensive options that have really short durations, where 2 of those defensive options have to be used 1.8 seconds apart from each other. So basically you Pulverize, clear the DPS check, then you Vesta Spear, Power Burst of Vitality, and then Shield Dome. After surviving that, the next thing you're going to do is do a Rune of Destruction skip. This is really important to do, the reason being that mechanic is the worst of the bunch. The reason for that is that it's a lot of damage that is spread out, and the only option that you have to reduce damage for more than like a few seconds is Pulverize. See, normally you would use Reflect and Debilitate, which each cut 50%, but the only option I have to actually reduce the damage throughout that entire mechanic is only by 25%. Not only that, but because I just tanked the DPS bomb, you essentially don't have Pulverize, so I have literally no options if I were to face that mechanic. If you don't skip it, the best case scenario is you're going to end the kill with almost no supplies left, and the more likely scenario is you're just going to die. So yeah, basically if you fuck this up once, you have a small chance of finishing the kill. If you fuck this up twice, just save yourself the death cost. Telly out. Once you pop back out, you need to clear his HP bar ASAP, because the first mechanic he's going to do is the Adren Cage. That one's really chill, that one's easy. But the mechanic he does after that is another DPS bomb, and a lot of the things you need to survive are on cooldown, so you will not survive it if you get it. But yeah, so after all that, you just go clear the next witch and start prepping for the next pad. So when you pop back out, you want to clear the trap that's on the pad, so just make sure you use Anticipate for that, then build back up to 100. Now for this part of the fight, we have a bit of a dilemma. Essentially, when you activate pad 1, your damage intake is going to increase a lot. Now the issue is, there's about to be a DPS bomb, which means you need to keep your HP high, but you also don't want to eat too much. So essentially because of that, over here I'm eating a couple of solids just so that I'm not drinking as many brews. But yeah, so for this DPS bomb, you survive it the exact same way as the last one. Now, so long as you don't chug too many brews, you should be fine for the DPS check. And yeah, for the actual damage, you stack Pulverize, Vesta Spear, Shield Dome, Power Burst of Vitality, and wearing the Easy K. Then you do another Rune of Destruction skip, and when you're teleported over, you just want to spam a bunch of basics until the game registers you as out of combat. That way, when you pop back out, you have as close to 100 Adren as possible. Similarly to the previous pad, once you pop back out, you need to clear the HP ASAP, because the first mechanic you're going to get is the melee slam, which isn't that bad, but then the mechanic after that is going to be another DPS bomb, which again, all your stuff's on cooldown, you're not going to survive it. The reason I'm just standing there is because I'm basically just waiting for the Rune of Destruction mechanic to end. I know me just standing there looks absolutely exhilarating and badass as fuck. Please contain yourself.
This world will burn!
So for the melee slam, you use Devo, and then for the bomb right after, instead of only using Shield Dome, you also throw in Vesta Spear with it. That's just because the last time I used Shield Dome was less than 2 minutes ago, so using just Shield Dome actually isn't enough. You die if you just do that. So the last pad has a lot of similar mechanics to the last two pads, but there's also going to be some extra stuff you have to juggle. So first off, get rid of the trap on the pad and then build up to 100 on Zammy. So once the last pad is active, Zammy's going to spawn a guard that reduces the damage he takes by quite a pretty significant chunk. So to kill it, basically I do a Chaos Roar overpower on it that guarantees that it dies. You can also use Devotion during this part of the fight, just because you don't really need it for anything anytime soon, and that'll help you just not drain your stats by drinking a ton of brews. As soon as the guard is dead, you want to start prepping up for the DPS bomb. So for that, you go back on Zammy, you use Pulverize. You want to save your Easy K spec for the DPS check, just because this one you're trying to clear it as fast as possible. The Easy K also consistently clears the DPS check, so you know to immediately use your Vesta Spear right after. After the bomb, you want to build a little bit of Adren, and then teleport over to the witch spot. Essentially, the next mechanic is the Rune of Destruction. Now, when you phase him, he does one auto and then does the attack, which makes it really easy to tell when he's about to do it, so you know when to teleport. The issue is, if you don't phase him, you have to essentially count 10 auto attacks between the two, which honestly, I don't know if I can count that high, bro. But yeah, no. So basically, by teleporting, you can let a lot of your cooldowns reset. You can make sure your Zerk is ready so that you can pop out and phase him before he gets the 10 autos and then does the attack. That way, by phasing him, you know exactly when he's going to do it. It just makes it so much easier to do it this way. So yeah, pop out, DPS the living shit out of him. As soon as you phase him, wait one auto and then teleport to do the Rune of Destruction skip again. Also, on this part, you can use Devotion because you're not going to need it right away. So I've pretty much said everything about the Rune of Destruction skip, so while we're waiting, I do think the limit before EOC2 for Zammy was around maybe 1.3 to 1.4k. I usually tend to undershoot what I think is possible, so I guess the limit is probably an extra like 100 or 200 above that. With the EOC rework, there is a chance that 2k is possible. I think the one bottleneck for it is going to be the DPS bomb. But anyways, so you're going to tele back out, then you're going to Zerk, and you're just going to DPS the living shit out of him. Make sure you don't use Devotion right away, just because you'll need it for the melee slam. You can use the Easy K spec on this part. The only thing is, if you do, you're going to have to just stand around on P7 and wait for it to reset. Also, you do want to end this phase with as much Adren as you can have. You don't need 100 or anything. It's nice to have when you start P7. Alright, so finally for the last phase, it's not really that different to how you do it on a main. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to put the Grimoire and you're going to put the Ring of Death on. Then G-Barge into the Demon and use Destroy as the threshold. That Demon absolutely hits like a truck, so you want to keep him stunned as much as humanly possible while you're killing him. Then you want to kill the first rune that Zammy's going to call out. You can use Meteor Strike, follow up with a Greater Ricochet, get back up to 100%. Use Berserk as soon as you can, drink your Adrenaline Potion, let 6 seconds pass. As soon as you hit 50 Adren, use Devotion, and then G-Barge into the second rune. Make sure to have your HP as low as possible, because when the Ring of Death is going to proc, it's going to damage you based off the last hit you took. Use the G-Barge threshold on Zammy, then Chaos Roar, Easy K spec, Overpower. Once the Ring of Death procs, use the Power Burst of Vitality, then do a Lang spec, use Limitless just in case, and then use Shatter. If he isn't dead after that, use Hurricane, and then spam your EOF spec and cross your fingers. So with all that being said, I hope that by next week I see one defense account running around with the 1k title all over the game. Be sure to tune in for my next video in 2 years from now, where I'm going to show you how to go from level 1 to level 1 defense. But yeah, no, on a serious note, I was hoping to get this video out a little bit earlier. It's just, I'm a college student, I got shit to do, bro. If you want, feel free to like and sub. I will say the main thing I care about is comments, because I really do like just reading comments. The good, the bad, the crazy, all of it's great. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. See ya.